Hi, this is Kerry here at Corny's tonight. I want to talk about that annoying little amber yellow light that comes up in your dash every once in a great while. The check engine light's been around a long time, since about 81, 80 and a half. Back in those days, it was a lot different than what it meant. Sensors had to go out quite a big range before they would go bad. I'll give you a quick scenario of a sensor and how it functions and what the computer's looking for. When a sensor has a range, the computer knows yes or no. As long as that part sensing sends signals that stay like in a gap like this, everything's fine according to program. Sometimes they just say right here. But again, these outside fingers here represent what happens when it goes bad. When a sensor gets out of range out here and stays there long enough, the computer's testing the whole time it's going down the road, it's going to turn your light on. We're down here. Now it can go back in here and start to function okay again. After so many test sequences, it'll turn the light out. I've seen that. A good example is catalytic converters. We see that frequently. The car, depending on how it's driven, or maybe the converter is just on the verge of showing a failure, the light will come on, go off. It may be weeks. Can be pretty intermittent. It's one of those things you can try to clean up. But anyways, the check engine light, getting back to that, is attached to so many things. There's no way that you can just go in there, and people like to pull the code, go to the auto parts stores, that'll pull those codes for free and say, hey, it says the oxygen sensor. Well, that just means that the computer saw that oxygen sensor out here out of its range for so long. That's all that means. That's a good example. There may be nothing wrong with the sensor itself, but it's a result. Sensor sitting in the exhaust, seeing what happened after the engine is running. So there may be various things causing that particular part to set a check engine light for. We've noticed lately too, again, this is a sore subject with me, oil changing. We're seeing now that it can come on for that because the oil gets low enough that the parts that it lubricates can't move properly, thus turning the light on. It's a whole different ball game though than it had been back in the 80s when I first started. The transmission is also fastened to that. Of course, it's basically supposed to take care of emissions. That's why that light's there. But there's so many parts that have changed. Computers all on board are communicating. If you think my job is easy, just go in there and find something that's intermittent. The worst part about intermittent, when it's intermittent like that, I can go on there and I can physically watch it work electrically, just like you would watch the monitor at the hospital on your heart. If it's working, it's working. When I'm looking at it, I can't say, hey, it failed, but you may go down the street as soon as you leave here, and then that check engine light will pop on for this same reason. We don't like to throw parts. We have the equipment to test each individual part to see how it's functioning. We now can access most cars by running the information to look at your car for that day or a couple of days, depending on how they have it set up. The light keeps changing. You're going to find expenses going up on your cars because of the technology, as you've already noticed. Well, if you have an issue, check engine light, be sure to come to Corny's. We have experience. We have a tech line. We also have a place online we can look it up and see if there's a pattern failure for that particular problem on your car. We're going to knock that bill down the best we can, put as few parts on as well, I should say as few parts, so we're going to put on what it needs, the best that we can narrow it down. Appreciate you being with me tonight. Hope that's a little helpful. One other tip, when you see the check engine light come on, push your tripometer button, start watching how many miles you get per gallon. If it's dropped off, you absolutely must get in to have that looked at. It's going to be very expensive. It will get more expensive if you don't. So hit that tripometer, start watching your fuel mileage if you don't have time to get it in right away. But other than that, if it's running okay or transmission problems going, you're already going to know the problem's there. Watch that fuel mileage as your best tip to knowing that you really have an issue. That's not going to fail safe, but that's still a good place to start, especially when you're on a trip. Thanks for being with me tonight. I hope that wasn't too confusing. I'll try to post the other blog posts I have on this subject for you. I'll be here again Wednesday night. We'll come up with something a little different. Hopefully, something will happen here at the shop as it does all the time. Take care. We'll see you soon.